T minus 30 seconds. T minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello and a very good morning to everyone. I am Basundhara from Logistics Insider and I welcome you all to yet another episode of In Conversation with, where we'll talk about brand building through supply chain excellence with a very special guest. India's decorative segment has been through a tumultuous ride in the past year due to the pandemic and its immediate repercussions. As the industry regains lost ground and emerges as one of the foremost markets in the overall domestic space, it is now witnessing a dynamic shift in terms of heightened demand, growing rural market, and overall changing consumer preference in the new normal. To lend more thought and shed more light into the industry, we have with us Mr. Alok Dhar, the Chief Manager Logistics at Asian Paints.
Hi,
An
good morning.
experienced leader with a dedicated history of working in various aspects of the supply chain in the consumer durable industry, Mr. Alok has been associated with Asian Paints for more than 13 years, having done stints in manufacturing, setting up a greenfield project, procurement, and currently heading logistics for Asian Paints in India. A production engineer and an MBA in operations management, Mr. Dhar has performed in roles across different areas in supply chain planning, logistics, manufacturing, procurement, and greenfield projects, and holds considerable prowess over operations management, negotiations, vendor management, project management, etc. We are really pleased to have you with us, sir.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
It is our pleasure. So before we begin today's discussion, I would also like to inform our viewers that we'll also be taking questions from the comment section below. So please feel free to type in your questions for Mr. Alok, sir. So, sir, starting off with the economy returning to normalcy and the disrupted supply chain due to the pandemic slowly bouncing back on track, what are the main factors that are driving the recovery and growth of your company?
Well, ever since the country started opening up after the initial phase of lockdowns, the initial part, say, somewhere around June 2020 onwards, we slowly started seeing markets open up, and especially the tier B, tier C cities, towns, the rural markets. We started a lot of opening up in those markets first, and slowly we started seeing other parts of the country also open up. For us, we have seen a very strong festive season. We have seen pent up demand kind of returning in that period, especially in many of the different parts of the country. In addition to that, what we have also seen recently in Q3, that is the October to December quarter, slowly the urban centers, the metro cities, the tier A towns, these are also starting to open up in phases as the pandemic is slowly starting to come under control with the number of cases and the efforts taken by the government. At the same time, the various efforts put by government and different industries in trying to boost demand, we saw a very strong Q3, and we saw all of that pent up demand coming back in phases. And we kind of expect this demand to stay there in the fourth quarter as well. And we feel that there will be some momentum which will kind of get carried on as the country comes back to normalcy slowly in phases.
Indeed, that seems very reassuring, and I believe the festive season has augured well for the paints industry as well as the other sectors.
Yes, for us as well as other companies in the industry, and even if you see most of the Q3 results, industries, the results have been pretty strong, which clearly show that the festive season has seen a lot of the demand kind of coming back in a strong manner.
Indeed. So, talking about how technology is now being utilized and used by segments across the supply chain, recently Asian Paints had announced that it would use AR, VR, and automation in its plants in Mysore and Vishakhapatnam. How is the company tapping into the potential of technology to solve the big pain points in the supply chain?
See, Asian Paints as a company has been investing in technology, the most recent state of the art technology of the times, from way back, maybe early late 60s, early 70s, when we were one of the first companies to buy a big mainframe for our planning and other such purposes. We were one of the first organizations in the country in the late 90s and early 2000s to invest in a big way in SAP, in the ERP systems. And over the years, we have invested heavily in technology for our planning and optimization systems. At the same time, in terms of manufacturing, also we have tried to invest in the most latest technology from across the world and try to set up the biggest state-of-the-art paint plants over the years. The first such attempt was way back in 2005 when we set up our plant near Chennai, which was probably first plant of that kind in India at that point of time for a greenfield paint facility. And over the years, with our subsequent factories, with Rohtak in 2010, with our plant near Pune in 2013, and most recently Mysuru and Vishakhapatnam in 2018, we have tried to invest heavily in technology, put big plants, and technology in the sense having the latest features in the factory automation with respect to robotics and conveyors, having the latest automation for the manufacturing execution systems. And our endeavor has always been that our plants should be able to provide us with those economy of scale, which kind of come in through this automation. At the same time, our plant should be capable of providing fast and reliable ramp up, which again is something which is only possible at that scale for a company of our size by investing in technology and automation. In addition to all these things that we have done on the manufacturing front with our plants, we have also invested heavily over the last few years in forecasting systems to try and predict demand as accurately as possible. We have invested heavily in setting up state-of-the-art planning and logistics systems, which are heavily based on IT platforms. We have also started investing in the last few years in technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning to help predict demand in a better way. So we, over the years, have believed very strongly in kind of investing in technology, which probably provides us with an edge in managing demand and supply in a very uncertain scenario.
Of course, and it's good to know that Asian Paints is also leveraging the benefits of utilizing technology into the supply chain. So, coming to omni-channel retailing, which has surfaced as one of the top choices for industries across the globe, actually. How has the company leveraged the benefits of omni-channel retailing, especially during the pandemic?
So traditionally, we have been an organization, especially in our paint business, where we are heavily retail focused. Entire business and revenue of the organization kind of coming through a very strong retail connect with our dealers all over the country, and we have kind of derived a lot of strength in being able to connect to the customers in the remotest part of India, and that's how we have really invested a lot in expanding our footprint on that retail front. But over the last decade, 2010 to 2020, we have also started to expand into other businesses, and we are not just a conventional paint company anymore. We have a home improvement business. We are into decor business in a big way. And now we are trying to capture the space between the walls in your home and trying to capture the maximum mind share of our customer with all the potential offerings. And we have gotten into the business of construction chemicals now, waterproofing, admixtures. So we are entering into all of those businesses. Plus, now we have very recently started our beautiful homes services and shops, where we have also now entered into the business of furnishings and furniture and lighting and etc. with Asian Paints brands. So these are the innovations that we have really kind of gotten into in the last few years, and they have really picked up a lot of pace in the last 1 year, maybe around the time when the pandemic really hit the country. And we have now expanded our retailing channels from beyond our conventional distribution channels to starting to engage with distributors. We have entered the health and hygiene segment in a big way, and our products there are kind of sold through the distributors, and that's how we are trying to expand our retail channel in a different manner to what we have been conventionally doing.
Absolutely. And with respect to the demand during the pandemic, do you feel with more and more consumers being forced or compelled to stay inside their homes and work from home in the new normal, do you think that has sort of accelerated the demand? Because for consumer durables industry, or say for the paint industry as well.
Yeah, we have actually, see, as I told you a little earlier, that as the country started opening up, we did see demand coming back to us in a strong way. In fact, even from the government, the initial projections, say in Q1 or beginning of Q2, about the rate at which GDP will contract, and the latest projections, there are always already a reduction. So at a country level, in terms of GDP predictions itself, we are seeing some amount of turnaround. So for us, yes, the initial period when we went into lockdown, the demand was actually was not there, and it only slowly started picking up. And then there were multiple complications with respect to lockdowns in different parts of the country and different states opening up the lockdowns at different times, and that also affected demand. But fortunately enough, we have seen that demand, despite people working from home, the urge for decorating their homes is still there, and we are seeing all of that slowly starting to pick up.
Absolutely. You had mentioned that the company is constantly on the lookout for new technologies or trying to leverage the benefits of the same. Can you share with us any interesting concepts, innovations, or technologies that have been introduced in your company in terms of category management, merchandising strategy, or cross bundling of products?
So as we have expanded our footprint into different businesses, from being a pure paint company, we are now actually into the decor business, and so we have offerings across a host of products. Now, if you want to decorate your house as a customer, maybe 10 years ago, you would have had to look at Asian Paints for buying paint and then probably look for your other needs at different industries, other needs with different suppliers. But today, if you want to decorate your home, whether it is from, whether it's about painting your walls or decorating your walls in a particular way, whether it's about redoing your kitchen, whether it's about putting the premium bath fittings in your bathroom, or whether it's about providing waterproofing solutions on your external and internal walls, decorating your home with the latest state of the art furniture, furnishings. Asian Paints has a big product portfolio with which this particular category bundling together is something that we are able to provide through our beautiful home services. A lot of our beautiful home stores have opened up in multiple cities and towns across the country, with the services being available in more than 40-45 destinations today. So that's the kind of work we have been doing over the recent years in trying to bundle our different product offerings and entering into newer spaces to try and capture as much of the space in a home decor area.
Absolutely. As someone with more than 13 years of experience to his credit, how do you manage a fine balance between catering to the uh, the balance between demand and supply, especially during such a testing time as the pandemic? How do you cater to this?
See, demand was something which was fairly uncertain even before the pandemic. If you look at the last few years, a lot of events happened throughout the country. So we've had heavy rainfall and floods over the last 2 or 3 years along the western coast. There have been events in the last 3 to 4 years, starting, let's say, in 2016 with demonetization, which was followed by GST introduction in 2017, then a GST rate revision in 2018. So these are all big macroeconomic events which have really impacted demand, not just for us, but for a lot of other consumer durable industries as well. So, and India is a very diverse country. There are festivals at different times in different parts of the country. So Durga Puja is a time in East when the demand really picks up and sees a particular pattern. Diwali in the northern and the central part of the country, to a certain extent, in the western part of the country, sees a big surge and is the big festive season for us. But at the same time, Pongal and many such related festivals in the southern part of the country towards December and January. So paint per se is a very seasonal commodity, and with all the various disruptions which were happening in the last few years in the general business environment in the country, predicting demand had become a big challenge. And that's why we had been investing into a lot of these technology platforms which would help us kind of navigate these uncertainties. What has happened with pandemic is, while the demand has probably become even more volatile, that's the first time we saw the supply situation becoming extremely volatile, because we were not sure which factories will be able to run in which parts of the country, different states having different lockdown rules. Our suppliers were based out of different geographies within the country, suppliers based outside the country with different countries having different lockdown rules. So, for the first time, probably during the pandemic, we saw a situation where demand and supply was kind of becoming extremely difficult to predict and manage at the same time. Typically, supply is something that is under the control of an organization, and you try and see how you can optimize your supplies to cater to a changing demand scenario. So that's a challenge which not just us, but many other companies would have faced in this period. And what we've tried to do is, and one big learning for us during this period is that organizations need to be able to react quickly. It's in a pandemic-like situation, it's just not possible to predict. It's a black swan event, and you just can't predict the after effects of such an event. So as an organization, and especially companies of our size and complexity, need to be able to be agile and nimble on our feet to try and continuously sense what are the changing patterns in the market, maybe every few days. What are the indications that our sales and marketing managers are giving to us, and how quickly we can convert those signals or those changing demand signals into production plans, into supply plans, into procurement plans for our factories and for our suppliers. And that's been something we have, in this period, tried to focus on heavily, try and get demand signals quickly and take quick decisions to change supply plans with whatever supply capacities were available. And that's something that we are going to be investing on in future as well, to get an end-to-end, for a supply chain planner to get an end-to-end visibility right from an upstream RM supplier's factory to the end dealer shop. What are the changing patterns and how quickly everything can be realigned to those changes?
Indeed, very wonderfully summed up. So, talking about how packaging is a very important section of the supply chain, we know that packaging is an important part of the supply chain that often gets pushed as an afterthought. How can better packaging solutions, in your opinion, help in optimizing the overall supply chain performance?
So, for us in our business, the quality of packaging, the strength of packaging plays a very important role. Whether it's concerned with transportation of our finished goods. So we have a very widely spread out supply chain all over the country. We have plants in different parts of the country, and we have sales warehouses in different parts of the country, and we have a supply chain which kind of connects all these sources and destinations across huge distances. Now, the quality of the packaging and the strength of the packaging kind of defines in a country like India, where maybe the infrastructure on the roads is not same in all parts of the country. For example, from let's say if I have to connect a product which is being manufactured in a plant in a plant in the western part of the country, let's say all the way to a warehouse in Guwahati, the kind of uh, journey that a truck would have to make, going through different parts of the country, having different road conditions, and subsequent transit damages that may be there. So in those kind of operations, the quality of packaging plays a very important role for us. How well we are able to kind of bear all of those in transit shocks for a particular vehicle. At the same time, when a company like us invests heavily into automation and technology in our factories, the quality of packaging and how easily automated machine can read what's written on the artwork of a packaging material, how easily a packaging material can be handled by automated robots. A lot of that becomes very important from a company which is so heavily integrated with automation and technology, and that's why I feel the quality of packaging material plays an important role for such a big scale of operations.
Indeed, very brilliantly summed up. So we are just moving on to the comment section because I see some questions there. I'll
Sure.
take a quick question from there. Okay, there's a question by Mr. Sahajanan Bhandare. His question is, what sort of model would you propose to tackle such disruption in a longer run and in case of seasonal products? I believe this is in reference to the previous question.
Oh, you mean the okay? So, see, now seasonal products is something which in our country like India would probably exist from time to time, and it would be a regular phenomenon. And the kind of supply chain, so it depends again from a company to company, what kind of strategies would you like to employ. The strategy could also be with respect to predicting which part of the year the season kind of occurs in, and then possibly having your stocking strategies, pre-building the material that you're going to end up selling during the season, and positioning all of that material strategically in different parts of the country so that you can have adequate material to supply across different nodes when the season actually comes in, instead of having spare capacity which only kind of gets used during the season. As far as managing the disruption is concerned, as I mentioned earlier, I think the key for a supply chain planner is how quickly the planner can get visibility to what's really changing, either in the market or what's really changing on the supply front. Is, let's say, on the peak of the pandemic, when different parts were opening up and different states were closing down, for a planner, it was very important to know whether a particular manufacturing facility would be open and would be able to ship material for, let's say, the next 1 week. And possibly at that point of time, predicting demand was not so important, but what kind of goods you can really, with all the shutdowns in place, what kind of goods you can really connect in the market. So for a planner, getting that visibility of what's changing, whether on the supply side or on the demand side, is very important. And once there are capabilities available where you can get visibility to all these changes quickly, and how what kind of speed with which you can build different scenarios, have a cost benefit of each of these scenarios, and how quickly you can then deploy those scenarios. I think that's the key for managing such disruptions, because I really feel that it's just not possible to predict the impact of disruptions. So, as an organization, you need to have capabilities which make you agile and nimble to quickly react to such changes.
Indeed, reiterating what you said, agility and getting visibility into the changing demands and supply will prove to be the key in overcoming these challenges. I believe that very efficiently answers that question. Moving on, so what are the top challenges that you face in inbound logistics with respect to choosing the procurement sources? What does working closely with suppliers to establish regular deliveries entail?
So, as far as inbound logistics is concerned, so we have a suppliers base which is spread all over the country as well as spread in different parts of the world. So we source our raw materials from suppliers based out in the Middle East, Southeast Asia, in China, in Europe, in the United States. At the same time, we have a lot of suppliers spread out in different parts of the country as well. So for us, the strategies to deal with and how closely we work with our suppliers actually depends maybe at times from material category to material category, but at the same time, it also depends on the geographical location of a supplier. Now, for a supplier which is based further out, let's say a supplier based out in Europe, the lead times would be much higher, and the kind of close integration we would do with that supplier would be in a way that we can kind of predict the next 2 to 3 months of our requirement with the supplier, and then try and work out how we can provide that regular visibility to those suppliers to kind of build their inventories and prepare their supply plans for our requirements accordingly. At the same time, for our suppliers in India, we have tried to experiment with different models. We have experimented with the vendor managed inventory model, where we have had some of our big suppliers setting up dedicated facilities just for us, where there can be a quick turnaround of material, and we can share our inventory and consumption patterns with them in a very transparent manner and help them optimize their supply strategies, and ultimately both companies kind of accrue benefits out of those strategies. At the same time, we have also invested in technology in setting up IT platforms which provide the suppliers, whether it's a supplier in India or outside India, with the visibility of the purchase orders being placed by us, the supplier able to tell us when the material is getting dispatched, and a lot of manual and physical communication kind of getting eliminated. So that's how we have felt that over the years, through a mix of technology as well as different strategies for different suppliers, would be something the way we have been trying to optimize our inbound supply chain.
Indeed, that is very impressive to know. Taking another question from the comment section, we have one by Mr. Sheldon M. Rose. His question is, in the face of increasing complexity, how can you manage costs and avoid increasing revenues and declining gross margins?
So, well, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. This
Short.
kind of managing this kind of situation. Now, complexity typically increases as an organization tries to spread its footprint and getting into newer products and providing customers with bigger and better offerings. At the same time, from a supply chain planner's point of view, managing more number of products becomes a lot more unpredictable, and then there are its own challenges of obsolescence and other such things. So that was, I mean, that's one part of the challenges you face as you try and introduce and work on more and more newer offerings to your customers. At the same time, it's these offerings and these newer products which kind of provide a company with its competitive edge in the market. And it's over the years we have really found it to be extremely important part of our growth strategy, how well we are able to kind of expand into other products, in the newer products, newer businesses. And to be honest, it's a constant game of optimizing how you can work on your regular and conventional and mainstream products, at the same time trying to ensure optimal service levels for your new business offerings. And what we have tried to work on is how well can we use how well can we use our say the strengths that we have built over the years as a top paint player in our conventional supply chain strategies, how we can help how do I mention how can we can help sustain the newer products which are more complex using those strengths. I think that's one place where we have focused on, and we have ensured that we make specific investments to try and cater to these newer products. For example, we are currently working on developing a model, a platform which will help us predict the demand of newer products specifically, and try and see how we can address the volatility on that front. But yeah, I mean, for a supply chain planner, this is always a very complex choice to make, because as a planner, I would always like to have a demand which is stable, and I can easily plan my supply chain strategies around that, rather than work on products which are extremely volatile and where I may end up doing a lot of changes in my plan.
Absolutely. Very knowledgeable insights by you, sir. There's another question by Mr. Bhuvan Jain. It is a bit company specific, so it's open to you if you want to take it. His question is, what would be changes in inventory sales ratio for your organization now, given that demand and supply becomes very volatile due to the lockdown globally? Also, he wants to know what kind of changes do you see in your logistics model, and if you prefer spot or contractual logistics.
I would not get into the specifics of certain numbers that Bhuvan has asked,
Of
but
course.
uh, so I mean, again, it depends on what's the focus for an organization. Now, the complexities thrown by the pandemic and other such events which will keep coming up is a fact of life. You really can't do much about those events. All you can do is how you respond to those events. Now, unless as an organization you invest in inventory, it's very difficult to support a ever growing market. Now, you can figure out what could be a balancing point for an organization, where you may want to stop your inventory optimization, and where you may want to start catering higher inventory to ensure that you get maximum reach. That's really an individual call for an organization, and depends on your growth strategies, depends on what's the focus at the strategic level for the organization. As far as the contracts, that there was a bit about whether it's a spot or a contract. What was that part of the question? I'm sorry, I didn't get the last one. Do we? Yeah,
What kind of changes do you see?
spot.
Do you
Okay,
prefer spot or contractual? Yeah.
so for us, logistic sourcing is probably a bit of a mix of the two models. Now, typically, we prefer getting into contractual modes for a specific period of time, which kind of give us stability in pricing. At the same time, it also gives our vendors, our logistics partners, visibility and stability in the kind of business they can get, and that will help them invest in developing their resources to cater to our requirements. At the same time, there will be occasions during a year, maybe specific seasons, which could be festival related, which could be related to a particular disruption, or which could be also related to certain events when let's say there is a harvest season in a particular part of the country. So a lot of your logistics will get attracted to that part of the business. So your logistics strategy has to be flexible enough to ensure that you take advantage, or that could be act as a tactic which you may, those spot rates you may have to use, and you may have to be prepared to kind of take care of such exigencies. But by and large, we have felt over the years that giving a contractual stability to our vendors helps them also to plan and build their business adequately to help us in the medium and long run.
Indeed, I believe that answers his question perfectly. So here's another question by the editor of our company, Mr. Tariq Ahmed. His question is, what are some of the methods and strategies used in order to minimize wastage in the supply chain?
So, well, for us, we actually have, so we work on minimizing wastage, say, in different parts of the supply chain. We, being a chemical company, ultimately paints is all about using different chemicals through formulations, and ultimately paint is a chemical product to a certain extent. There are different technologies that we use in our plants to try and minimize wastage. Our processes have been designed in such a way that waste generation, whether it's a liquid waste or a solid waste, is limited to a particular amount and is within the statutory limits. At the same time, as far as transportation and logistics is concerned, for us, shipping of material across vast distances in the country, the risk of damages, which ultimately lead to waste generation, and then that has to be disposed, is a big challenge that we and many other organizations like us kind of face. And over the years, uh, we have invested in innovating our loading practices. We have invested a lot of time and effort and money in training the the team which kind of takes care of the loading operations. We have set up SOPs to ensure that while moving through a high damage route as well, you try and minimize your damages. Additionally, we have invested a lot in cargo securing, and in certain cases, we have experimented with modifying our vehicles to ensure that the in transit damages are as low as possible. So, these are some of the strategies which we have really experimented with over the years to try and minimize wastage in our logistics operations.
Indeed. Thank you for walking us through the strategies that is being used in your company. So there's another question by, okay, there's a question by Mr. Syed Riyad. Container shortage, congestion in various transshipment connecting port created disruptive long-term supply chain at post-COVID. How do you manage this situation, like out of stock situation? Want to offer it?
Actually, yeah, I mean, this is a problem that we are also, kind of figuring out how to grapple with. And it's not just us. I
Right.
think most companies all over the world, I think what has happened in the last 1 year is that when the pandemic kind of hit, maybe most organizations decided not to invest in newer capacity.
Right.
And as different countries, including India, kind of came out of pandemic, a lot of the pent up demand started coming back on at the same time. So there was a sudden surge in demand for countries all over the world. So a combination of capacities going out and newer capacities, which probably would have come up year on year, not coming in, even in the container and shipping industry. At the same time, a demand peaking across different countries at the same time, by and large, because everybody was kind of coming out of the pandemic around the same time. That has created a heavy situation of congestion at ports, and shipments getting delayed. And I mean, I've been reading news articles where General Motors has mentioned that they'll be shutting some of their factories. I think somewhere in Asia because of lack of semiconductors. So this supply chain disruption is impacting a lot of the companies all over the world, and we are also kind of uh, facing this. And I mean, to be honest, there is no technology which can help you come out of this sudden, unexpected disruption in a global logistics setup. But what we have tried to do is maybe start planning on a longer horizon, and try and build up strategies on how we can provide that visibility to our suppliers in different parts of the country, sorry, different parts of the world, so that while these congestions have been there in the ports, and this probably leads to a situation where at the last moment a supplier may inform you that the shipment is delayed by 15 or 20 days. We have tried to see how we can do medium term to longer term contracts and provide our suppliers with maybe next 3 to 4 months of demand, and then see how we can kind of build that into medium term to long term contracts and ensure that our suppliers are being provided with all the necessary information from our side to ensure that despite this disruption in the ports, they are able to cater to our requirement. But out of stock is a situation that even we are kind of grappling with. I mean, I don't think there's any company which is not facing that situation today.
Absolutely. As we're approaching towards the end of the session, I'll just take some quick comments from the comments section. Here's another one by Mr. Sheldon M. Rose. What do you think is the greatest risk your firm will face in the next 2 years, and what are some of the strategies used to plan for these risks?
So for us, now the big. So I mean, looking at the current growth path that we want to be in, the medium term and long term, strategy and the direction that we have set up for ourselves, I think the medium term or the risks in the next 2 years would be around how we can set up our supply chain capabilities, how we can spread our capacities all over the country to kind of meet those requirements. That kind of business direction requires a lot of investment in physical infrastructure, at the same time as in infrastructure based around information systems, and how well we can kind of work around those things to try and address all the volatility, to try and address increasing competition, to try and move into newer businesses, and how we can ensure that those offerings reach our customers in that period would be the big challenge, and would also be the big area of opportunity as well as risk, I would say, and how we can cater to these at the same time, ensuring that our supply chain strategies with our suppliers are de-risked to a level which is strong enough for us to be able to kind of navigate this volatile customer demand.
Indeed. So moving on to another question, it's about your future outlook of the industry. We have Mr. Anupam Wanto who wants to know what are your thoughts on the logistics industry boom in the coming future? What is your take on that?
So, as far as the logistics industry is concerned in India, I think we have made some big steps in the last few years slowly, but I still feel, for us, the way we see it is, as a market leader, there is a lot of responsibility on us to increase the per capita consumption of paint and our products all over the country. And there is still a big scope left there if we compare us with some of the developed countries. And whether the logistics networks, whether it be warehousing, whether it be transportation, whether it be different modes of transportation, not just road, how effective are modes of transportation through inland rivers, how effective are modes of transportation through sea, through train. These are different logistics modes which are still, I feel, a bit underdeveloped. And I think that's for a country which has to grow, let's say, by 7 or 8% GDP every year. Logistics in a diverse country like ours will become very important, and I think that's going to be the next big area of focus for the country, whether it's with respect to the government introducing policies and investing heavily in the infrastructure and different modes of transportation, or whether it's organized players investing more in this logistics industry in a much bigger manner. But I think that's clearly one area where a lot of opportunity is there, but at the same time, it requires a lot of investment as well.
Absolutely. So summing up with the final question for today, since we are almost
Sure.
out of time, how do you ensure that outbound logistics network is capable of delivering to a potentially huge number of destinations?
So, so what we typically do is we ensure that we don't supply from every plant to every destination in the country. We probably look to form clusters, and that's kind of based on the optimization that can be done in the cost and how spread out our manufacturing footprint is. and that's how we try and work and optimize on that bit of the logistics network for us. At the same time, we have been investing on expanding our footprint to the remotest corners of the country to try and reach all our customers. And we have also been trying to invest with our partners, the logistics partners that we have, in building their capabilities and putting expectations on them, which can give them clarity of how they need to kind of set up themselves to cater to our ever increasing size.
Indeed, and with that, we have come to the end of today's discussion. Brilliant input, sir. I would like to thank you for this very informative and very knowledgeable session. And I can also see in the comments that people also have said the same. Supply chain excellence is indeed the key word of 2021 for the industry, and I'm certain that the valuable insights that you've provided on building a resilient supply chain will surely benefit a lot of our viewers, especially the new and curious entrants to this industry. So, thank you, sir, for taking the time out of your busy schedule, and I look forward to more such enlightening discussions with you. I would also like to thank our viewers for their participation and for their questions, and thank you all for being a part of our discussion. With this, we take our leave.
Sure, thanks.
Thank you.